Okay, welcome back. So what we're going to be covering in today's class is business models. Actually, we're going to be doing this in the next 2 videos, maybe 3 videos, depending on how it breaks up. Because I don't want to do too much of it at once, but a business model is extremely important as far as understanding how to set up your business. And we'll get into why that is as we start working our way through the business model. So first of all, let's do a little bit of a review. Last session, what we had talked about was Stitch Fix for dogs, and we were doing a value proposition on Stitch Fix for dogs. And I went through all of the submissions, and I pulled some of the ones that I felt like students either spent some extra time coming up with, or I just thought were uniquely good, or they made me laugh. I'm not saying these are the best ones submitted. I'm just saying these are ones for you to consider. So look through the list, see if yours made kind of the cut, and if so, take a little extra pride in it, because that meant it appealed enough to me that I threw it up on the slide. We've got very simple things like Big Dogs Need Love Too, Doggy Faction with Customer Satisfaction, Big Dog Clothes at Small Prices, We'll Exchange Our Styles for Your Smiles, Fashion for Great Reaction, The Dog Needs New Kicks, Get Some Stitch Fix, which I thought was great. We got your dog covered, pretty straightforward, right? For all dogs to be possum, I thought this was cool because it was a nice simple takeoff of the word awesome, and by saying possum, everybody gets what it means. Big dog, bigger style. No pup is too big for a zip up. A dressed pup is a better pup. Large clothes for larger dogs. Again, size matters. Somebody's been saying that a little. It's a perfect fit. Perfect fit, again, like perfect, really well done. We make small dogs jealous. I actually laughed when I read that one. Pup Shawnista, this was not so much as a complete value proposition, but somebody tried to come up with one word to work, and they had kind of told me that equals fashion for your pup. Some personal wardrobe style for your dog. The best clothes for your best friend. No rough clothes for your job. You pick it for your dog. You pick it. We stitch it. A doggy fit with a a doggy fit with a bog stitch. And I'm not exactly sure what a bog stitch is. I think they meant to say with a dog stitch, but I want somebody to give me feedback on that. Tired of nude pets? We've got your big dog covered. Putting your dog first for owners who are big body positive. And I really like this kind of takeoff on how you should just embrace whatever your body style is. Bigger dog, bigger clothes, fits that fit your dog, keep your pets warm and your wallet warmer, which, again, is indicating price. Fetch the right fit for your four-legged friend, using words that, are more on, inside of a dog type environment like fetch. Dress like you're on Vanity Fair, again, a takeoff of Vanity Fair. Your dog deserves drip too. This one finally made the cut because I didn't even know what drip was till last semester, and somebody else had kind of used the word drip in class, and I had no idea what they were talking about, and they explained to me what it was. So now your dog deserves drip too. So those are some of the value propositions that were kind of sent in last class. Again, I'm not saying they were the best ones. There aren't some that were better. These are just ones that for some reason jumped out at me. I put on the slide, figured I'd share them with the class. It also lets the class kind of know directionally where people were thinking of things from a value proposition for our Stitch Fix for dogs. So today we're going to kind of transition. Value prop is actually, you're going to see, part of this business model. I teach it as a separate segment because there's a lot around it that I want to make sure you understand, but we're going to actually insert it inside of a business model here in the next class segment or two. So what is a business model? That's probably the first thing you're asking. Well, let's talk about it from more of a pure kind of what I always like to say academic perspective. It describes the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. So I know a lot of you are like, what? Like, why are we saying all that? What does that mean? So here, I'll clarify. It functions as the blueprint for a strategy to be implemented through organizational structures, processes, and systems. Now you guys are like, what? I'm more confused. Stop talking so complex. Why do we have to say it that way? I agree with you. Simply put, what a business model is the way a company generates revenue and makes a profit from the company operations. So simple, right? The way a company generates revenue. How am I generating revenue? Am I selling hamburgers? That's how I'm generating revenue. In Stitch Fix, I am selling clothes. I'm selling subscriptions actually for clothes. So remember, the clothes themselves carry the price, but people are subscribing to the service. I am then providing them clothes on a monthly, quarterly, semi-annual basis, whatever they've decided they want. So simply put, the way a company generates revenue, what am I selling, and then makes a profit. What am I selling against all of my expenses? I want to make a profit from my company operations. That is, at its very basic core element, what a business model is. It's not overly complex. What am I selling? How am I making a profit? Okay, so that being said, it's not that simple to actually build one and implement one. So let's try to have you guess at who this might be. Take a minute and read over this business model. Okay, if any of you are thinking, and we were in class and we were live, I'd be taking all sorts of guesses. And typically somebody almost always gets it close because of the clue that's in the last sentence. Creating a better world through leadership in the areas of responsible drinking, the environment, and the community. And people will dress things like they'll all be guessing things like one of the new vodkas that's on the market, or some bourbon company, or a tequila company. But really who it is AB InBev. AB InBev. So AB InBev actually owns some of the largest alcohol or beer companies in the world. And their actual business model is they go in and they study different countries, and then they try to purchase the actual companies that are producing or that are market leaders in beer distribution in those countries. I mean, if you look at kind of the United States, you can see Bud Light and Michelob Ultra. If you kind of look down to South America, you've got Modelo. If you look over to kind of the Europe area, you've got Beck's. And so there's, Australia's got Carlton. So they've gone around the world and tried to acquire the top brands. I mean, if you look at the little corner, it says 7 of the top 10 brands are owned by AB InBev. So their business model is, we are going to acquire companies that have already figured out how to sell something and make a profit from it in a certain area. And then they consolidate all of those, they bring them together, and then they get efficiencies of scale from the operations, and they make more money. They have over 500 beer brands. They're sold in over 150 countries. So this is not just some small little company that is trying to do it in one place. So that's AB InBev. Let's try another one. Okay, some of you are reading this and probably thinking, ooh, highly competitive sportswear equipment and apparel market. I know that's got to be Under Armour, because we studied Under Armour earlier in the course, and we looked at Under Armour's business model with Kevin Plank, and he was the founder. And yes, but no, it's not Under Armour, but you're at least in the right ballpark if you were thinking Under Armour. This is Nike. And you can see what Nike's business model is. It's saying core activities, design, development, and marketing. Design, development, and marketing. It doesn't say manufacturing. Outsourcing of non-core activities like manufacturing, they leave to contract manufacturers. They are trying to do things that they consider to be core to them, and manufacturing is not core to them. So a lot of the times you'll hear people talking about their business, and they're trying to do all of it. They're trying to do from A to Z, every single portion of it. What Nike has said is, if we focus on building our brand, if we focus on designing great products and then get someone else to build them, all of the costs associated with running a factory to produce shoes or running a factory to produce clothes won't be ours. All of that heavy asset-based business model kind of things we can put on somebody else. We will pay somebody else to be the contract manufacturer, because we want to stay core to our business model, which is designing and developing a global brand. And so they're able to put their efforts into things that promote their product, and they leave some very expensive elements of their business to others to do, to run a factory. So Nike isn't saying we are the best manufacturer in the world. They're saying we're the best designer in the world. We're the best branders in the world, people who can build a brand. And so it helps to start thinking a little bit differently. So Nike is all about building a brand. AB InBev is all about acquiring brands that are already built and profitable. And so these are two very different business models. AB InBev is actually producing their product. They are manufacturing their beer. Nike does not manufacture their clothes. Instead, they outsource that to contract manufacturers. And so you can see the contrasting styles of these two business models. I mean, Nike's mission is to bring inspiration to every athlete in the world. It doesn't say to design and then produce the best clothes ever produced. They are all about bringing inspiration. So when you think about a business models, just like everything else, I mean, if you were a child and built a car model or had built anything out of Legos, those are all models, right? You have this picture on a box, and then you have all these pieces, and you're actually building this model. And you can tell when you put models together, there's foundational pieces that go first. If you're doing a model of like a car, you have the frame that you put together first, then you put the tires on, and then you start adding parts to that, because there's foundational building blocks that you have to do first. If you're doing anything with Legos, it's the same way. You build some sort of foundation, and then you build up from there. And so very similarly, a business model has building blocks. And these building blocks are things that are kind of terminology from a business perspective or an entrepreneurship perspective that you will hear and you will need to get familiar with. And I'm just going to lay them out for you now. And we're actually going to dive into each one of these, not in very much depth, but just a little bit, so that as you hear them as you go forward, you'll at least understand the landscape of what's being talked about. So first of all, one of the building blocks is customer segments. We have value propositions, which we just did last segment. You have channels, which we'll talk about channels. Channels are the way your product gets in, gets out and gets sold and consumed by consumers. Customer relationships, what's that going to be? Revenue streams, key resources, key activities, key partnerships, cost structure. We're going to go over all of these in depth. And one way to look at these is on something called the business model canvas. Now, each one of these, if you think about it, can translate to a business model canvas. We're going to study business plans a little bit later in the semester where we'll talk about them. But I always like to say, if you think about the core building blocks of a business and what's required, you can actually lay them out on one sheet of paper like this, and it's called the business model canvas. And this could become a one-page business plan. I mean, if you think about it, it's who do I need to partner with? What are the key things I need to do? What are the key things I need to have? What makes me unique or different? That's the value prop. What type of relationship do I want to have with my customer? Who are my customers? Those are the customer segments pieces. The channels, you can see the little truck. How am I getting my product to market? The cost structure. What does it cost me to make my product? And my revenue stream. How and where and what am I selling it for? And all of a sudden, I've got an entire, what would normally be a 20-page business plan laid out here on one nice, clean sheet of paper. And we're going to get into this, a little bit more in depth. And again, it's going to be the next 2 to 3 segments. We're just going to talk about each one of these just a little bit. Again, I'm not trying to make you so that you can sit down and write a business plan in 20 minutes. But I do want you to become familiar with the terms so that as we go through things, as you are working and running around the business community and someone says to you something like, well, what channel are you using to get that to market? You're not thinking, what do you mean? Direct TV channel, what? No, you're actually understanding that they're asking you, are you using online sales or are you using brick and mortar retail sales, from a channels perspective. And so you'll get some understanding of these as we go through them. So the first things we're going to talk about is customer segments. Customer segments are extremely important. If you think about you as a college student, you are a customer segment. You are a customer segment to the university. But yet inside of the university, there are additional customer segments because the university has many majors. Some of you are doing engineering. Some of you are doing, liberal arts. Those become subsegments or different customer segments actually inside of the university. So while one customer segment for University of Houston is all students graduating from high school and or people who are ready to go back to college, once you become part of the college, part of the university, you then all of a sudden now could potentially become another segment because you might have very different interests in what you want to study. So a customer segment defines the different groups of people a company aims to reach and serve. And so the different groups of people, a organization or a company, so every graduating senior from high school is the different group of people. The company is the University of Houston, and we aim to reach and serve because we aim to have you enroll and learn and become educated. And in doing so, you pay tuition, which is how kind of the business enterprise works. So that's what it is. Now, a customer group represents separate segments if any of the following are true. They require and justify a distinct offer. So let's talk about this. What does that mean? Let's look at it from the standpoint of Stitch Fix for dogs first. Especially since we just got familiar with those. We're saying that Stitch Fix for dogs is uniquely positioned to target big dogs. And we are saying big dogs need a distinct offer than small dogs because small dogs' clothes and big dogs' clothes are inherently different. So if we're saying that, then big dogs and small dogs are different customer segments. Another simple way to look at this is look at it from sports. If you look at equipment manufacturers, every sport is a customer segment because a hockey player needs different equipment, meaning a different need satisfied than a baseball player does. So their needs require a distinct offer because you have to say to the hockey player, hey, this equipment will keep you safe. When you get checked or when you get hit by a puck, you're not going to end up with a bruise. So that's a very different message than a baseball player where you're saying, hey, this bat will help you hit the ball the farthest. Telling a hockey player that a bat hits something far does not do much for them. So it requires a distinct offer. So hockey players are one segment, baseball players are one segment. Now, you can do some branding across all segments. Let's think of University of Houston for this, as we were talking about before. Branding can be across all segments. University of Houston provides an excellent education. But then you can have some unique offers. If someone is uniquely interested in entrepreneurship, then the distinct offer that's going to be made by University of Houston is we are the #1 entrepreneurship program in the country. And so we are going to be pushing that and promoting that to those students that are interested in entrepreneurship or those customer segments that are interested in entrepreneurship. Yet somebody who wants to be an electrical engineer, they don't care that University of Houston's the #1 entrepreneurship program in the country. They want and need University of Houston to be talking about their needs. And so a different offer would be made, which might be things like University of Houston has one of the top electrical engineering programs because, and maybe it's we provide real world industry knowledge, meaning professors that come in and teach are coming from industry, or we offer the most internships where we can put you out into industry and allow you to get practice in your major and actually use your major, et cetera, et cetera. So different offers, different customer segments. If I have to get to you through a different distribution channel, if the only way to reach you is online, then you're a different segment than someone who is brick and mortar. Now, some of these crisscross, right? Sometimes you'll be like, but wait a minute, I buy some clothes online and sometimes I buy at a brick and mortar store. That's okay. You'd be considered the same segment then, especially if you were buying the same products. But if you need very different distribution channels to meet and get to your customers, then those are different segments. A different type of relationship. Let's talk about this one. An easy example to think about customer segments requiring different types of relationships is when you think of like a bank. If you think of Bank of America, for instance, most of us are just what we would call common customers at Bank of America. We're transactional. When you walk into Bank of America and you make a deposit, you just make a deposit, you go to the window. You have online banking, I'm sure a lot of you do, or some online banking tool where you can pay your bills and look at how much money was given to you. If you walked into Bank of America and said, hey, I would like to look at doing some investing with you. You know, Bank of America has a relationship with Merrill Lynch, and Merrill Lynch is their kind of banking and investing arm. And they said to you, well, sure, you know, what's your amount that you're thinking of investing? And you're like, well, I've done really well for myself. I'm a young student and I've saved, you know, $20,000. What they're going to make available to you is some online portal, very much like your banking relationship, where there's a place you can go invest. You can go pick some mutual funds. You can open up a brokerage account and you can self-service and make your own investments. But if you were to walk in and say, Well, I'd like to look at investing. And they were to say, well, how much do you have? And you say, well, I've done very well for myself and I invented something and I've sold it. I'm only 24, but I have $3 million to invest. You're going to have a different type of relationship. They're not going to give you a www.merrilllynchgohelpyourself.com email address. They're going to sit you down and set you up with a personal wealth manager, because they are figuring, because you have more money, that you might want a different type of relationship. And so that makes you a different customer segment than the, what I would call, retail investor, the person who has $10,000. So that's an easy way to think about different relationships. You're a different customer segment, or considered a different customer segment, if it requires a different type of relationship. The $3 million investor probably needs more hand-holding, needs a little bit more attention, needs a little bit more time, somebody spending time with them to help them put their investments in place, whereas someone with $10,000 doesn't require that same type of relationship. If two lines have different profitability, then it's groups that are reaching are different customer segments. And so if you have two products and one is targeted for very high-end, very boutique, you know, and its profitability is 100%. You make 100% on everything you sell, but then you have a whole nother line where you make, you know, 5%. You're going to be targeting very different customer segments, because the same customer is not purchasing each one of those products. And so you would have different customer segments if you have products with different profitability. And if people are willing to pay for different aspects of the offer, and this goes back to, let's look at, they require different types of relationships. Like, we can use our wealth management thing here too. If you are willing to pay 1%, let's say, or 2% of your entire portfolio for help, well, you're probably going to have a different relationship with the investing firm than someone who's like, I'm not willing to pay anything. I'll pay, you know, $1 a month and I want free trades, you know, for my investments. That person is going to be a different customer segment than the person willing to pay for advice and assistance. And so again, you have to be looking at your business and say, who are my customers? Are these customers willing to pay for a different level of service than these customers are willing to pay for? If so, then each one of those customer segments is different. And that's how you need to start thinking about customer segments. So again, customer segments are groups of customers. They're customer groups. And if any of these things are true, then they are different groups. And the importance of this is because you have to have different value propositions for each customer segment. Because remember, you're having to answer the question, why us? Why me? Why us uniquely? And this helps you figure that out. So I want you to watch these 4 little blurbs on Nike and their customer segments. Girls, I asked to do they small. Well, ask them what do they know? Ask them can we go? Pretty girls, sunshine in the air, perfume everywhere. Girls are everywhere. Ladies to the floor right now. Allowed to unlimited, remind you of the sky when I'm in it. We on cloud 9 for the minute. Admire your style and your physique, and I ain't trying to critique, but you deserve a good drink. What's up? What you sipping on? It's no problem. Knocking gold bottles like I'm pro New Orleans. But shawty, I'm far from a saint, but I got 2 A-Maxes that look the same way. Wale, DC, that's me, huh? My brother say Prada and they probably say Fila. I ain't gotta tell you, they know about me, huh? Come to DC and I can make you a believer. See, baby, I'm a leader. Stay away from a Libra, and I ain't trying to lead you wrong, sugar. I need. Okay, that's enough of a snippet of that one from a customer segment perspective. We're going to talk about these, each one of these, in a second. See if I can get them all to work without any issues.
动去打成一片，用运动玩得开心。
用运动，就算他们都说你做不到，一点一点都做到，接着勇往直前。
见到心中的神，
用运动活出精彩，
交到朋友，
再晚点回家，
放眼都是兄弟，
都是姐妹。
就算失败，就算再败，再失败，总会赢。
无论你是谁，
无论从哪儿来，因为运动永远不会说你不行。
Snow day. 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 Touch. Tackle.
Greatness. It's just something we made up. Somehow we've come to believe that greatness is a gift, reserved for a chosen few, for prodigies, for superstars, and the rest of us can only stand by watching. You can forget that. Greatness is not some rare DNA strand. It's not some precious thing. Greatness is no more unique to us than breathing. We're all capable of it. All of us.
Okay, so those were 4 different commercials or 4 Nike ads targeted at different customer segments. And we're going to kind of go through these. If you think of customer segments, you can think of them typically in the different ways like this. Mass market things, things that appeal to everybody. Niche markets, things that appeal to a very small segmented group of consumers. A segmented market, which in a lot of cases, this is like a really good way to look at your bank, and they segment you based on your net assets. You know, someone who has $1 million is going to be in a different segment for them than someone who has not as much. You have a diversified market. Somebody like Amazon is a diversified because they have, you know, like products that they sell online, and then they also have like Amazon Web Services where they do cloud computing and they do all those cloud services, and that is obviously very different. And then you have these multi-sided markets, and that's like a credit card company because it has two customers. If you think about it, it has the stores that it must convince to use its credit cards, and then it has you, the consumer, that it must convince to use your actual credit card. And so when you think about those Nike commercials, like where do they fall in? Like who are they after? And if you think about each one, like let's look at Snow Day. Snow Day is appealing to who? It's obviously appealing to like a mass market. There's no one group of consumers that it focused on. I mean, if you think about the athletes that they pictured in that, it was very much every sport was represented. There was hockey, baseball, football, soccer, ultimate fighting. They had an athlete representing almost every sport, but they didn't have them actually playing their sport. They gave you a little bit of an indication because, you know, when they came up from under the snow, maybe he held his hockey stick, or maybe the girl, you know, punched out the window of the truck. So just a little bit to help tie you back. But that was very much a commercial that was appealing from a segment's perspective to all segments. And they were just saying, just get out there, right? Get out there, get involved, do something. Their message was that way. But then like a niche, right? A niche market is going to be a very specific market. It's going to be like something like car seats or an audio system. Or in this case, if you think of the Nike commercials, it was girls, right? And not girls everywhere. They were kind of more appealing to like the skateboard sect or grunge or whatever that terminology is that you would use for that. But they were basically saying, hey, you can go do all this stuff too, and you can be cool doing it wearing Nike shoes. And then, so there's lots of different ways that companies try to sell their products. And what you could see from all of those commercials and the different segments that they were after is that they were pushing and giving product for different things. And they had different segments in mind, which each one of them. If you think about Nike One, it was a demographic commercial. It was focusing on who you are. Nike One was the girls, girls, girls commercial. So girls, boys, men's, women, old, young, those are demographic type focus. And they would fall more into like a niche market. If you think of Nike Two, it was geographic, focuses on where you are. Regions, countries, they were saying use sports, but they were clearly focused on Asia. They were focused on one country. They were not focused on all of the different countries in the world. And it was segmented. It was based on sports because every sport was represented, if you think about it, or it could have been mass because every sport was represented. They had swimming and they had basketball and they had biking. They had soccer all in that one commercial. If you think of Nike 3, that was more behavioristic. It's on how a product makes you feel. How did it make you feel? It was clearly a mass approach. The Snow Day, we already talked about that. Every single sport pretty much had an athlete represented. And then there's like these psychographic ones, and it focuses on an attitude that transcends the product. If you think about the Nike 4 commercial and greatness, and the whole thing about greatness, it was all more about an attitude that transcends the product. They didn't even have Nike on the kid's shirt that was running. He didn't have Nike shorts. You couldn't tell if he was wearing Nike shoes. It was not Nike, 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 Nike. They were trying to create this attitude that transcends the product, and then they simply showed at the end, you know, the Nike, and that was when you figured out that obviously appeals to a mass market. And so these were all different customer segments: a demographic segment, a geographic segment, a behavioristic, a psychographic. All of those commercials were targeted to people differently. They were supposed to make you feel differently. They were targeted towards different customer segments. Okay, so that's what we've got so far for customer segments. We're going to come back in the next segment and do a little bit more on the business model. So far, hopefully I haven't confused you, and you're going to enjoy this and look forward to you in the next session.